What if I told you that Ferrari didn't expect Hamilton to be so fast, and that Leclerc is worried about what he discovered in testing? Can a pilot reveal more than an entire team of engineers? Stay, because what is happening in Maranello is more important than it seems. What happened in Barcelona was not in any scenario of the Ferrari technical department at all. During the 5 days of testing at the Circuit de Catalunya, the SF26 not only met the mileage or reliability objectives, which in themselves are already essential in this early phase. What set off all the internal alarms was something else: the unexpected perfection of his performance under the hands of Lewis Hamilton. The engineers expected reasonable correlations between the simulator, wind tunnel, and real data, but what they saw was more than that: an almost perfect alignment between what was planned in Maranello and what was executed on the track. Every piece of information, every aerodynamic pressure reading, every interpreted curve, every weight transfer, it fit. In simple words, Hamilton accidentally discovered the optimal way to drive this car before the designers themselves finished defining it. And that, for a team like Ferrari, represents a double side of the coin. On the one hand, it confirms that the SF26 project has a higher ceiling than they believed. But, on the other hand, it calls into question whether the entire technical development system is really optimized. Because if a driver can get ahead of the car, then the internal tools may not yet be at the level needed to fight for a constructors' championship. But that's not all. The most revealing data was not the fastest lap, but the consistency. Hamilton wasn't just fast, it was constant. It repeated fast sectors without overheating tires, without degrading, without altering the balance of the car. His understanding of active aerodynamic modes was pinpoint. It activated mode no improvised reaction. It was all calculation. And that raised a question that resonates in Maranello. How did he reach that level of symbiosis with the car so quickly? The alarm was not activated by a fault. It was activated by an uncomfortable truth. Ferrari did not know its car as well as its new driver did. And now, they must decide if the car they thought they understood is going to be redesigned around the person who discovered it for them. What Lewis Hamilton said after the Barcelona tests was not part of the expected script. And it wasn't just because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Because, although it was an environment of controlled statements, in front of the specialized press and with the team hanging on every word, Hamilton spoke with an ease and confidence that disconcerted many within Ferrari. And the most intriguing thing is that it was not an empty phrase. Hamilton was not talking about general sensations or vague comparisons. He spoke with surgical precision. He explained that the SF26 had a nervous, oversteering, but controllable personality. To any other pilot, those words would sound like criticism. For Hamilton, they were a virtue. Because that type of behavior, which caused so many problems for others in the cars of the post-2022 era, is exactly what he learned to master in recent years with an unstable Mercedes. Where others see discomfort, Hamilton sees room for control. But the turning point came when he referred to the internal atmosphere at Ferrari. He said that this year he felt a real winning mentality, marking a dividing line with the atmosphere experienced in 2025. And that comment, although subtle, contained political dynamite, because it was interpreted as a criticism of his first year in red. A year in which, despite all the team's efforts to give him a competitive environment, he never found total connection. Now, however, he spoke of building from here, of solid foundations, of projection. Hamilton was not simply assessing the present. He was declaring his confidence in the future of Ferrari. And that change in tone was justified. Technicians. Real. During the final day of testing, Hamilton completed 67 laps without mechanical failure. No strategic errors. No complaints about balance. He was the only driver to achieve that level of stability in a full session. And that, in a team historically marked by unexpected failures in the preseason, was a symbol of transformation. But what was most impressive was not its raw performance, but what the telemetry revealed. Hamilton was driving the car with a level of precision rarely seen. It activated aerodynamic modes X and Z right at the regulation threshold. Not a second before, nor one after. It was not reactive driving. It was pure anticipation. Advanced track reading. Every time he entered a fast corner, he calculated the exact moment to put on the maximum downforce available. And when exiting, it released that load to maximize speed on the straight without compromising tire wear. Furthermore, its use of the hybrid system was particularly aggressive. Under braking, it diverted part of the work to the energy recovery system, MGUK, releasing pressure from the traditional brakes. This, theoretically, compromises the stability of the rear axle. But in practice, it generated additional traction in the second sector of the circuit, gaining between 0.06 and 0.08 seconds repetitively, without additional wear or overheating. This not only surprised the technicians, it directly impacted the perception of the car within the team. Because until then, it was thought that the SF26 still had unexplored performance areas that required simulator adjustments. But Hamilton did not wait. Hamilton found them on the track. He used them. And it showed that the car, at least in its hands, was already closer to its competitive ceiling than Ferrari thought possible. And that is the true core of the surprise that his statements caused. It was not an act of arrogance. It was a sign, an alert. Ferrari thought it was building a base. Hamilton was already building on the second floor. This disconnect between the team's self-image and what its own star driver revealed is what breaks Ferrari's technical and emotional script. Because it forces us to rethink the car's development line, data validation, and above all, the strategic priorities for Bahrain. If the car is already competitive in Hamilton's hands, will the new package be optimized to further enhance that style? Or will a neutral platform be sought that does not risk Leclerc's confidence? What is clear is that Hamilton's words were not improvised. They were measured, loaded with intention, and they leave an inescapable feeling in the air. Ferrari has something powerful in its hands, but he also has a dilemma. Because there is nothing more disruptive than discovering that the driver is already one step ahead of the team. Leclerc's statements after the tests were measured. He talked about progress, a good environment, and promising data. But between the lines, something else was noticeable: caution. He said he felt better in the dry than in the wet, that he was still understanding the car, and that there were areas he needed to work on more. But what he did not say, and what could be extracted from the internal dynamics, was his bewilderment at what Hamilton managed to do without yet having a full year in the Ferrari environment. This contrast is key, because while Hamilton talks about a winning mentality, enjoying the car and being prepared to build from a solid base, Leclerc still seems to be in the translation phase. Translation of sensations, data, technical language. And that could be a bigger problem than perceived. Ferrari has based the development of the SF26 on the conclusions of Barcelona. And those conclusions are, in large part, influenced by what Hamilton showed. This means that the new update package that will debut in Bahrain is optimized, although not openly said, for Hamilton's style. More rotation at entry, more stability at high speed, more load transferred through the rear axle, more use of the hybrid system in the braking phase. And what about Leclerc? That is the question that many are beginning to ask themselves within the team. Because if the car evolves in a direction that moves away from its comfort zone, it runs the risk of losing internal competitiveness. And what is a difference in testing today can become an established hierarchy within the team tomorrow. And that, for a driver who has been the center of the Ferrari project for years, would be a radical transformation. Bahrain will not be just another test on the preseason calendar. For Ferrari, it will be a critical branching point. The exact moment in which the team must validate whether what happened in Barcelona was a fortunate anomaly, or the first sign of a profound change in the internal balance of the team. Because beyond the fastest laps, race simulations, or correlation data between track and wind tunnel, Bahrain will serve to answer a much more complex question. Can Ferrari build a car that performs as well in the hands of Hamilton as in those of Leclerc? The package of improvements that will be tested at the Secure circuit is not a minor one. This is the first major aerodynamic upgrade of the SF26. It will include a new flat-bottom design, adjustments to the diffuser, tweaks to the front wing, and, according to technical sources close to the team, a complete overhaul of the hybrid mapping software. It is, in essence, the transition between the base version of the car, the one we saw in Barcelona, and the real specification with which Ferrari hopes to start the championship with aspirations of victory. And crucially, that package has been calibrated, in part, based on the data Hamilton generated. Not on a whim. Not like favoritism. But because it was the most solid, consistent, and technically usable data. This already raises a first tension in Bahrain. What will happen if the improvements clearly benefit Hamilton's style? What happens if Leclerc fails to find confidence with this new evolution? The Secure circuit, with its mix of slow corners, hard braking, traction zones, and long straights, will test not only the aerodynamics of the SF26, but also the relationship between driver and machine. If Leclerc continues to take a step back, even in dry conditions, a narrative will begin to form that will be difficult to reverse throughout the season. But there is more. In Bahrain, Ferrari's response as a technical unit will also be evaluated. Can two different driving philosophies adapt in real time? Or will they prioritize the driver who, so far, has shown greater adaptability? Are they going to continue developing based on one's performance? Or will they bet on a technical convergence that, perhaps, does not fully exploit the individual potential of any of them? Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.